Hi, everybody. This is Audrey Moore with the Audrey Helps Actors podcast, and this is episode 121. Having some fun, hopefully staying out of the sun. Don't get heat exhaustion, global warming, woo! All right, this episode is Workaholics Are Us. Woohoo? Question mark? Okay, so today we have Nick Bognar. Nick moved to LA to become an actor, but quickly shifted to helping actors through therapy. You know I love a good therapist on you guys. And Nick is incredible. He's been helping actors and artists find joy again for years, and he's here to help us do the same. Today we discuss being a workaholic in the entertainment industry, setting boundaries and self-care, the impact of the pandemic and strikes on the entertainment industry, and the emotional and psychological aspects of acting and therapy. OMG. All right, the review baby is having some yum scrummy scrum time. Provided by Ali Dumby, it's like Mamilla envelope. Live stream failure and Nosy Rosie 98. I'm here for you. Thank you everyone who fed the review baby. Please take 20 seconds to feed the review baby by going to www.ratethispodcast.com/Audrey, or if you are not an elder millennial, you will just go to ratethispodcast.com/Audrey. It helps the review baby, it helps us, and it helps me get the validation that I so desire. Even if you're like, Audrey, she can just go fuck herself. I hate that girl. That's, I'm here for it. I am. Because then I get it and I'm like, OMG, did you see this review about somebody who's like, Audrey can go fuck herself? I'm not getting a lot of those, but when they happen, I like a little drama. This week's podcast is brought to you by Casting Networks. Go to castingnetworks.com/Audrey. Use the promo code AudreyCN. That's AudreyCN for Casting Networks, not AudreyCN for cloudy nights. For $65 off a premium annual membership. All right, I hope you're on your way to set. Or I hope you're setting up a self-tape right now. I hope you have somebody coming over to help you sell. I hope whatever self-tape setup is what's happening for you that you like is what's happening today, and that you have a great time and that you book it. Audrey helps actors because they don't know anything. Hi, everybody. I'm Audrey Moore with the Audrey Helps Actors podcast, and today we have
Nick Bognar. I'm a marriage and family therapist in Pasadena, California.
I'm so excited to have you on. So many reasons. One, maybe one of my most favorite things to do is to talk to people I don't know yet about things that I am really interested in, and especially when I feel it is really relevant, to today and society at large, but also especially to the industry that I'm trying to help of actors and industry show business people. And you are currently a licensed family therapist in Pasadena.
That's right.
You have a practice in-person, virtual, both?
Both,
hybrid?
actually, yeah.
Wonderful. And you also have a team of people that are, I don't know what it's called, working under you, assistants?
Yeah, so I have associate therapists beneath me.
Great.
I have 5. I was at 6, and one of them, Phil Stark,
yes,
just got his license and is out on his own. So we're really proud of him.
Congratulations, Phil. Yeah, very good. So I wanted to have you on today to talk about workaholism. And I'm going to get into sort of like personal reasons for that, and then also collectively in the industry, what we're experiencing, and then what I also think we're experiencing nationally as well.
Sure.
And you already have a podcast. You want to tell them the name of your podcast?
I do. I have 2 of them. They're called
God.
More Exemplary and Action Practice Building.
Action Practice Building, you guys. I mean, how great. So like I have for actors, you have a podcast for therapists.
Yes.
Where you try to help them understand both some of the technical sides of things and also maybe more clinical discussions and
Yes.
things like that. I mean, just what a match made in heaven, you and I. I mean, I just love it.
Totally agree.
Okay, great. You're also a former theater nerd.
Yes.
So when I found out that you had a podcast and also you said you were like a former theater nerd, I was like, check, ladies and gentlemen, we will have you on. And I am so thrilled. So tell me a little bit about, do you have actors currently or present or past that you have as clients that navigate the industry in any way?
Sure.
I'm sure you do.
I think probably virtually everybody in this area who has a practice has people who are in show business in one form or another. You know, I try not to be too specific about anything, but yeah, certainly. And I think that we all do.
Only bring it up because I know that if you have a practice in Los Angeles, you have actors, and that speaks to a certain level of experience and qualification in terms of you knowing what we're going through and have been going through these last several years.
Yes.
In a way that I don't have to like sit here and fill you in on.
No.
Because you're well
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Right there with us. Okay, wonderful. First, I ask people their landscape.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about how long you have been in this profession and just give everyone a brief synopsis of why you got into it. And the reason I ask is so many friends of mine are currently transitioning from acting to becoming licensed therapists. And so tell me about it.
I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's a way better gig. Yeah, it's interesting. So I have an undergrad degree in theater, and I studied acting, and I enjoyed it. I think for a variety of reasons, talent being one of them, I was not meant to do it. But I did study it. I did get my degree. I really had a moment coming out to Los Angeles where I worked in a restaurant right after I moved out here. And one day I was standing at the host stand, and I heard these two servers talking about auditioning for an agent. And I was here 2 weeks. I was brand new. And I had this thought, which was like, oh, I don't want to do this that badly. It was really like, oh, look at this. These folks are auditioning for somebody else to send them on more auditions. And then if that works out, then they get to act. That was really a moment. I actually never went on an audition once after getting out here.
Wow. What a blessing.
Clarity. Blessing. Absolutely. And so it was one of those things where I really got some clarity on my own commitment to it, blessedly early.
Yes.
And then I did music for a long time because that's something you don't need as much permission to do. It's something you can really do and enjoy. And if you can sell 30 beers, then any club will be happy to have
Great.
you. And then I followed my other career being an executive, moved to Chicago for a time, and then came back to Los Angeles right at the beginning of the economic recession. So then I started another career and came back here, and there were no jobs. And so I went back to waiting tables, which I was good at. And then I got married, and in the middle of our couples therapy, which, by the way, anybody who has access to couples therapy, I highly, highly recommend it. My therapist said, did you ever think about doing this? And I brushed her off and brushed my wife off, who thought it was a good idea too. And then 6 months later, they asked again, and I agreed reluctantly to go on a tour of Phillips Graduate Institute.
Yeah.
And it was life-changing. I just went there, and it was like, oh, this is where I need to be. This is my place.
Love that clarity. Yeah. Also, again, what a blessing.
Totally, totally lucky.
And I love that you have the perspective of, oh, yeah, no, that doesn't sound like an enjoyable experience when thinking about auditioning for the agent to audition.
Yeah.
And I do have an actor that I met, and I had told them about some school that I thought they should go study at. And then they called me because they were crying in their car, and they just had this realization that like they really didn't want to go in.
Wow.
That they really liked acting, but they didn't want to do all that.
Right.
That like all the things that they felt like were required to do it, they didn't have that drive for.
Yeah.
And so they went another way.
And you tell me, do you think that the people who do go through with it, do you think that that's because they find a way to fall in love with the really labyrinthine and long process of agents and auditions and going out and rejection? Or do you think that that's because they just want it so badly that they stick it out through the torture?
I think it's all of the above. And I also think it's, for many people, a very healthy dose of delusion, which has been propagated by a century of Hollywood's public. Yeah, right.
Can you swear on this podcast?
Oh, we're very marked explicit.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah. Hollywood's what I call great PR machine.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like when Prince Harry came here with Meghan, I was like, we did it. I was like, we won. I was like, we got one. Because it was so clear to me of this American dream that anyone could be royalty here. Yeah. And then we like literally took a royal and nabbed him.
Right.
And was like, how about Netflix?
And didn't she, I don't follow that closely, didn't she get him to quit being a royal? Didn't he like?
That's what I'm saying. Wow. That's what I'm saying. Like, we won.
That's breathtaking. Yeah. We are actually the new fantasy.
Really? Yeah. we're not that new, but compared to the royal family.
Yeah, exactly.
Who are we babes?
Put in less work.
Yes.
The one that makes me crazy is, I don't know the name of that shopping center, but it's right smack dab in the middle of Hollywood where they have the tiles on the ground. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, it's different people's...
Chinese man's.
No, but it's near there. And it's like
yes.
people's different stories of like, oh, I was sitting in the soda counter and somebody came in and that was my audition, or I got Wizard of Oz. And it's just, it kills me because I think unhoused people sleep on those
unhoused
tiles,
actors.
Yeah.
Sleep on or former actors, or, whatever.
Sleep on top of the propaganda.
Yeah. I'm so excited for this conversation. I love talking about propaganda. And I say this all with an understanding and awareness that I am an actor. I am a working actress. How you feel about being a therapist is how I identify as an actor. Like, oh, yes, this is the thing. Mm-hmm. And also, I had so much childhood trauma that I needed to be rejected consistently.
Oh.
For a solid 10 to something years.
Welcome home.
Great.
Said the industry.
Exactly. And I did have a very good therapist say to me about show business. Well, that's what all of you are out here, is you're just a bunch of people who were rejected permanently by your families.
Wow.
And so you came out here to be consistently rejected again and again and again until you healed that part of yourself.
Wow. How long did they know you before they did that? Because that strikes me as a second or third year
No, that's
revelation.
Amazing. No, they didn't know me well at all. That was actually in Family Week at my brother's rehab facility for substance abuse. Mm-hmm. And the therapist was like, you and your brother are the same person, except you found acting and you found an outlet that sort of guided you and took you out. Mm-hmm. And he did not.
Wow.
And so he went into addiction, which is the perfect segue to talking about workaholism.
Yes.
So I wanted to bring you on and talk about workaholism because, first of all, for very personal reasons, which is I'm seeing so many people really deal right now with burnout. Mm-hmm. And I think the strikes plus the pandemics, as you know, the pandemics really hit the show business industry in such a weird way. And it was like we were the last to lift restrictions. It was like us and hospitals, right? We're the last to lift anything up. Also, then we sort of came out of that right into a strike year. And everyone has been being told, oh, well, it's the pandemic, it's the pandemic, it's the pandemic. And then it's like, oh, well, it's the strikes, it's the strikes, it's the strikes. And now they're being told, oh, well, because of the strikes, there's a contraction after the strikes.
Oh, boy.
And I was here for the last round of striking during the recession. Mm-hmm. And I remember people telling me, oh, it's the strikes, the strikes, the strikes. It's the economy, it's the economy, it's the economy. And my American, Irish, hyper-vigilant, dedicated, gritty self was not going to take that as an answer. I was like, but what can we do? Right. What can we do?
Which is an adaptive mind. I mean, for anybody who's in business, and all actors are in business, I think that's what you have to look at it as.
Right. Because the options are you do something about it, or you go do something else.
I have a thing that I talk about in practice. I call it like a loser story. And it's a loser story if you have a thing where I'm endlessly a victim and I have no choice but to be victimized over and over again, right? And I have so much sympathy for people in their trauma and their victimization. But if you feel like there are no jobs and then you make it your job to continue to go around and get jobs while believing there are no jobs, that's a terrible, endless pit to be in.
Yeah. Won't lead to fulfillment.
No.
I would say.
No.
And particularly what I have noticed in both my own experience and all of my colleagues who have crossed over the mountain from not working actor to a consistent career maintenance of various levels, right? Is that nothing is fixed or changed or solved once you get on the other side of the career mountain. So I became pretty aware of that earlier on. And during the pandemics, one of the ways in which our industry was really affected was any small, just a little blot of boundaries that was still existing in show business was completely wiped clear. The roadblocks were all gone.
What do you mean by that?
The boundaries in time as considerations for employment in show business have always been murky at best, but at least you had things like a little bit before my time, they had to messenger you sides. And then the expectation that you were memorized was not there. Often you would go into the room, you would read read it through with a casting director who would literally direct you because they didn't have the expectation that you should know what was going on
be fully
here.
formed in the
yeah.
part. Yeah.
And that you should be informed about what's going on because this show doesn't exist yet. So how do you know what's going on? So you're going to come in, the casting director is going to direct you. And if they feel like you are a good fit, you're going to go and work it some more and you will get a call back and then you will have a working session with directors and producers. So it was this process, right? You could have a collaborative artistic
that there would
discussion.
be room for you to get better during the process.
Right.
And show your ability to adapt.
Correct.
Got it.
And that because this is a creative, collaborative, in-process process, right? And then when the pandemic happened, we went completely into self-taping. And what occurred is that everyone was panicked about getting more content made because everyone was consuming content at a level that nobody had been consuming content since I don't know if ever.
Right.
And so the amount of content being sucked up by the audience was astronomical. And they were like, we gotta go. We gotta make more content. We gotta make more content. We gotta do more.
Right.
In addition to the streaming wars were occurring between Netflix and all the major studios. So they were already at war. And then that war was sort of leveled up by the circumstances of the pandemic. So in terms of anyone's boundaries, and I want to make that clear, not just actors, but anyone's boundaries of agents, managers, casting directors, there was no sense that you could or should have boundaries because we were all in survival mode. Let's not let our industry collapse along with our sanity.
Right. Did it feel like that was the hostage situation that you were in? Was that if you don't concede to these demands, the industry will fall down and then there will be nothing left for you?
God, I love that you use the word hostage situation. It's so real because I have said on this podcast in talking about the audition turnaround, which was just changed in our new contract, that I felt like at any moment an audition was going to shoot me.
Wow.
Like living my life was like, okay, I'll just live my life. But then maybe an audition is going to shoot me. Maybe an audition is going to shoot me.
So you have to be hypervigilant in that thing.
The amount of hypervigilance is very real. And also for many of us, I will talk about myself because I love to, is the experience that hypervigilance is my form of fight or flight.
Got it.
And so I think for a lot of people, they went into flight mode, which meant they were in various forms of depression or all normal.
Crawl under a rock.
Reels, all of those things, right? And mine is and has always been hypervigilance.
Okay.
And so, yes, I would say it was a twofold hostage situation. It felt like an external hostage situation being held by the industry at large, and then an internal hostage situation because I had to save myself through hard work in this pandemic and in these terrible times.
Right.
Don't worry, I had therapy. I went and saw a great therapist.
Before we met here, you dropped a couple of words that let me know that you were an enthusiastic and diligent consumer of therapy. You used it
to put it mildly.
Oh my God. If you ever want to fool me, use the word enmeshed correctly. Well, I got to say, listening to the podcast over the last several days, I love how frank you're being about the real economic and professional and human costs of the field and really not doubling down on the nonsense that people are so actively propagating.
Yes.
And just saying, look, it's real and you can make it and you can have a career in it and it's brutalizing and it chews people up and spits people out. And that the bottom line is always the part of this that they're looking for.
Yes.
And don't ever convince yourself that it's not.
Yes. What a beautiful summary. I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it as a tag somewhere on my social media. I'm really so glad that you get that and in such a short period of time because that is so much of my mission is not to sound jaded, not to come across as somebody who's like, this is bullshit and this business mission.
Right.
Because I believe in the value of the art form and the work so deeply.
Right.
I think the ability for storytelling and entertainment to provide relief to us, just like music, is so generous and so beautiful. And I am grateful to anyone that does any of that. And I'm aware that it can just provide some relief. And I think that's just nice.
Yeah.
So I feel honored to be a part of that group, but I also don't want people to be sold on the propaganda.
Right.
And I also don't want people to be sold on the doomsday either.
Right. You want them to be clear-headed and with their eyes wide open.
Yeah, if this is it, then this is what it actually is. This is it.
Yes.
Right? In the same way that maybe my friends who are second generation, third generation actors understand. And so maybe this is my way of being like, I didn't get to be a Nepo baby, but maybe through the podcast, all of those listening can get a little Nepo baby perspective.
Yeah, can hear what was around the dinner table for your friends that had that.
And understood with clearer eyes what the choice really was and still made the choice because it was the choice for them.
Sure, yes.
Wonderful. Great. So I would love to talk about some things that I have learned about workaholism. And one of the biggest flags for me that made me think like, huzzah, was the good old internets had this discussion about how when you are young, you exchange your health for money. And then when you're older, you exchange your money for health.
I heard youth for money and money for youth, but I understand.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, no, that's not great. That's not great. And also through these years of feeling like you're going to get shot by an audition, and also that you should be so lucky
to be shot by
as to be one of the people getting shot by auditions on a regular basis, right? I was very aware of the health effects that had on me, both in a daily sense of anxiety of, am I going to get shot at today? And also, I hope I get shot at today.
Right.
Combined with 7 o'clock comes around, I get 14 pages of sides. It's for a life-changing opportunity. It's due tomorrow, 10 a.m. And this expectation that everyone was putting on of a sense of perfection, but also none of it seemed to matter anymore because no one necessarily was even watching your work.
Right.
Because it was just going into the ether, right?
Yes.
And then try to go to sleep after that.
And to have that normalized too. This wasn't a, wow, you're never going to believe this. Here's 12 pages of sides. We need somebody come tomorrow, but more just that like, fuck you. We knew you'd be sitting here.
Yes.
Memorize these.
Yes.
Or else we're not going to talk to you and you can deal with that. Yeah.
Or you're not working hard enough.
Right. Or you don't want it.
You don't want it badly enough. And you're a loser.
Right.
You're an asshole. You're entitled.
Right. Hard to work with, right?
Hard to work with. Absolutely. And all those stories that I think are also easier to digest as realities when you're already in a fight or flight position.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Such as pandemics and strikes.
Well, and the word we haven't used yet that I think is really important is trauma.
Oh,
and I want to say, the pandemic was traumatic for everybody.
Right.
Even people of profound privilege were traumatized by the pandemic. And if you want to see what, 300 million traumatized people look like, just look at all of us for those few years, therapists included, we were all scared out of our minds. And so, of course, a field like acting or like show business where people are already traumatized a lot of the time coming into it and then already traumatized by the business, then to be further told that like, by the way, your field is either going away or it's changing in a way that you'll never catch back up with it. That's a trauma. And then to emerge into the strikes, and strikes are traumatic too. People don't know how long they're going to last. There was that awful quote from one of those executives where it was essentially like, we're trying to traumatize these people so that they will relent, so that we can exercise our will over them. It's terribly traumatic. And I think people need to understand that that is real and it's happening to you. And that one of the things that comes as a natural response to trauma is addiction.
Yes. Oh, yes. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad I'm here too.
Addiction. So I would love to talk about workaholism. Okay. So there were a few flags that let me know that I think it's time that I take it actually seriously.
Okay.
And one of the reasons is because workaholism is, again, in this industry and also in this country, exceptionally rewarded as a behavioral.
Yes, it's insidious.
It's insidious, right? So as an example, I looked up meetings for Workaholics Anonymous in Los Angeles, and there are 2 online meetings. And so I thought, there are 2? Like, I'm aware of this city, and I know how many AA meetings there are.
Sure.
And there's only 2 Workaholics Anonymous meetings. And so that was an interesting...
and why do you think that is?
I think that's because it is rewarded. It is seen as a badge of honor and helps corporations to continually successfully exploit labor. Because if the narrative is you just got to work harder, and then
And you did great. Thank you for working 60 hours this week.
Yes. I'm not going to pay you, but I am going to applaud you and your vigilance. And then I'm going to put the story of how your hard work made you an exception.
Yes.
And we're going to then use that exception as a standard by which to hold you and everyone else too.
And we will also tell other people that the clear roadmap to your success was that you were willing to work 80 hours a week. It was not that you were lucky or that you were white or that you had a family member who was in the business or that you were dating somebody. It is because you worked harder than everybody. We are going to treat this like it is a meritocracy.
That's right.
It's demonstrably not. And I think another reason why it's less prevalent and less well known, Workaholics Anonymous, is that people can quit alcohol 100%. It is possible to live a life without drinking. It is virtually impossible to live a life without work. And I think that is one of the things that makes things like workaholism, recovering from eating disorders.
I was just going to say eating disorders.
Lots of addictions where it's even harder because you cannot live your life without some form of this in your life.
It's management.
Yeah.
It really is something that has to be managed. I mean, I've been thinking about the eating disorder correlation a lot. You know, I'm a child of the 90s, had an eating disorder when I was in the 90s time of my life. And so I do remember feeling at that time, what was so unfair about it was that I had to eat.
Oh.
And that my friends or family who had addictions, like could just not go into a bar. Or you could just not do cocaine, but that like it has to be managed through willpower, not through abstinence. And then cut to workaholism feels very similar in exactly what you just said. That like the need to work also feels endless depending on your economic status.
Yes. And it's hard to tell what is healthy work and what's not healthy work. The same way it's hard to tell what's healthy eating and what's not healthy eating.
Wow.
And believe me, my hat is off to anybody who quits drinking because it's really hard and it requires a lot of inner work.
Yes.
But the inner work that is required of any person quitting addiction that I think is harder on people with eating disorders and workaholism is that you have to actually look inside yourself to see the actual effect it's having on you and your motivations for doing it. And then really watch yourself constantly and monitor yourself.
That's right.
And that's brutalizing. I mean, and then imagine managing that at a time where you're also getting 12 pages of slides and being told you have to be ready at 8 a.m.
Absolutely. And also that you're lucky. I just want to keep going back to that you're lucky to get that.
Right.
And that is part of why I've always been passionate about this podcast is because I felt that the lack of willingness to discuss what it actually is so much because of everyone's fear of retaliation against it, but you're lucky.
Yes.
And I just also want to say, listen, I understand that I am lucky to be and pursue acting.
Yep.
I am not in delusion about that. I am grateful, lucky to do it. Now, what's real?
Right.
And what is healthy and what is sustainable.
Right.
Wonderful. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a few things that I learned.
Sweet.
And some things that I sent you. One thing that was interesting that I researched was that studies have found that whether or not you are passionate about your field of work or not, the effects of workaholism are the same.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, God damn it. And that you can be a person who works a lot, but is not a workaholic.
Absolutely.
And so the difference is your relationship to it.
Yes.
Right? So a person who maybe works 50 hours then is like, I'm out. That's just somebody who works a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and all over the world, there are people who are working themselves to the bone just because that's what they have to do to support themselves and their families, right?
Yes.
The other piece of it is what are the effects of it on your life? And that's a really important one too.
I love this conversation because it also reminds me of the Sober Curious movement that has happened over the last several years, which is that you don't have to have a drinking problem to have a problem with drinking.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
And so this reminds me of that you can be working too much or you can be a workaholic.
I tell clients all the time, if you drink 20 beers a night and there are no effects, I mean, there would be no way for your liver to withstand that. But let's say hypothetically, you drink 20 beers a night and there are no negative consequences in your life, then you are fine.
Yes.
If you drink 1 beer a year and it fucks up your life, then you have a drinking problem. And it's really like, it's so hard because we don't want that. We want easy metrics that we can say, this is me and this is how I demonstrate to myself that I don't have a problem. And the truth is, the answer is so much more complicated than that.
And I love when the answer is so much more complicated because that's why I have this podcast. I understand that we need sizable bits of information. I subscribe to that as well. Also, I love when I get just a little bit beyond the sizable bits into like why things are complex. And I find that is both soothing, validating, and nourishing to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of it all. One of the reasons that I started really taking this seriously as an actual issue was because, Jesse and I, my husband and I, we don't drink very much. And we have friends that, I would say almost all of our friends, they're either like sober or they drink all the time.
Right.
And Jesse and I are like, how could, not even in a judgment way, but just more in like a astonishment way.
Right.
How does everyone drink so much?
Yeah.
And then if we have like 1 or 2 drinks, we're just like, that is plenty. And we are then be destroyed the next day.
Sure.
And so we like literally just don't understand the mechanics of how that's happening.
Yeah.
And then I started getting feedback, or maybe listening to feedback that was similar, but about the amount of things I get done. That are people who are like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
How do you get it all done?
Right.
What about work-life balance?
But they're actually asking, it's really 2 different questions phrased the same way.
Right.
How do you do it? One of them is, how do you survive that? And the other one is, teach me how you go to 8 auditions a day.
Yes.
And do this thing, right?
Yes, that's right. Because of Mirka, right? So we have this validating experience of working yourself to the bone. And I said to my manager, who's very supportive of all of this, I said, I just kind of think I realized like I'm an alcoholic who married an alcoholic, and we own a bar and we live in Las Vegas. And like, that's what it feels like.
How interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And perhaps because I'm out of enough of the trauma of the last 4 years, and also just more mature and all of those things, I'm sort of like, is that what I want to be? Is that healthy?
Are you thinking of selling the bar, so to speak?
No, I guess I'm thinking, can this bar be operated differently? Do I have to drink all day in order to work at the bar?
And yet imagine, since we're getting
gritty,
right?
Love it.
Your bar, so to speak, has a union.
That's it.
Imagine what show business would be like without unions. Could you imagine? It would be horrendous. I mean, it would just be even so much worse than it is now.
I don't even have to imagine. In production years, Jesse has met with producers of films. He's like, you know what you got to do? You got to shoot in Budapest. Budapest is great. You just hand people a hose and let them drink water.
Oh my God.
And they're like happy to be there. And you're like, what? And also, I have tons of friends who come from other countries to work here because they want to make a living and make money. And this is the place because of the union.
Is that a real story?
That's
Go
a
to
real
Hungary
story.
and drink them out of a hose?
Yeah.
Think about how dead that person's soul is. I mean, imagine, could you sleep doing that to other people? And I know people
couldn't.
who have. I worked at a restaurant years ago that shall remain unnamed. And my boss said, when you hire people from the cordon bleu because they have to get internship hours and you don't have to pay them.
Yes.
And that blew my fucking mind. And it was true. Cordon Bleu has since changed that policy, by the way. They don't allow their interns to be hired for no money anymore.
Okay.
But for years, it was under rampant abuse by the restaurant industry. And I remember lying to my boss and saying, she just wouldn't work for no money. So I had to hire her. And fortunately, my boss never pushed back on it. But it was a stated directive. Find these people because they will work for nothing and we can, and didn't use the word exploit, but we can exploit them.
Yeah. And I also understand that it's the employer's job to get you more for less.
Sure.
And it's the employee's job to get you less for more.
Yes.
Like, I understand the basic agreement we're here to duel over.
Sure.
But yes, without a union who's going to come in and say after a strike, no, you have to give them 48 hours and you can't give them more than 8 pages. And the quality of life that has changed so much more than I even knew it would, and I knew that it would.
Right.
But wait, Nick, wait. I have to interrupt you.
Help me. I need some help.
And now it's time for listener questions.
I'm so scared.
This listener question is brought to you by Casting Networks. Casting Networks is where more professional roles are booked than any other casting service. The things that I like about Casting Networks, everyone is so interested right now in getting reps. A ton of people have been dropped. A ton of people are like, I got my shit together. I want to get my rep on. And so they have something called Talent Scout, trademark, which connects you with agents and managers. And I just think that's great. So Talent Scout, if you're like, I'm looking for some rep life, and that's available with a premium membership. And we're offering you $65 off a premium annual membership. Use the code AudreyCN. That's Audrey CN for Casting Networks, not Audrey CN for creative neuroses, which I also have. All right, Audrey CN for $65 off a premium annual membership. Call us with your questions at 667-ACTOR-70. That's 667-228-6770.
Hey, Audrey. My name is Patrick Lyons. I'm tuning in from Austin, Texas. I've listened to almost every single episode of the entire podcast, and I freaking love it. This isn't a question. This is a guess about what the heck Don't Forget Your Towel means. I have to thank you because your motto of Don't Forget Your Towel has quite literally inspired me to not forget my towel. I work out at the gym 6 days a week. I'm an online fitness coach. I end up being very sweaty going from one thing to the next. And admittedly, I used to travel in my car without a towel. And I kid you not, but ever since hearing your podcast, I travel with multiple towels all the time. And so literally, as I am sending this voice message, I am on my way to something. And because of my towels, I will be well put together in a non-gym setting. So I have to thank you. And so, yeah, I guess that's my guess. That you're literally just telling us not to forget our towel because you never know when you're going to need it.
Well, this is a really great guess. It is not correct, but it is very satisfying. And honestly, one of the worst things about a gym, right, is like the dripping gooiness when you come out of like a machine or a fitness class, just like puddles. So I'm not a person who sweats a lot, so I am not particularly well versed in the puddles. But my husband, on the other hand, he's a puddle sweater, which is, not lovely, but healthy. That's the healthier way to be. So I'm glad that you get your towels. And honestly, I feel like it's a good public service because now everyone at the gym gets a little bit of a nicer experience because you are keeping yourself a little maintained. And cleanliness and godliness, why not? I'm here for it. So thank you for your guests and thank you for calling in. I love any kind of calling in. I love your stories. I love your drama. I love your questions. I love your warnings. I love it all. Call it in! 667-228-6770.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
All right, everybody. This is the work addiction syndrome checklist.
Okay.
The one that to me stands out the most is, do you feel out of control or powerless at times when it comes to setting limits, going home, or quitting work for the day?
I'm not in a position to tell that person that they don't know what they're doing, but that strikes me as a very aware person's.
I agree.
Do you know what I mean? Don't you think
Yes.
most people feel empowered by working 8 extra hours? I mean, and not in a good way, but don't you think people
Maybe.
confuse it with like, I'm doing something great by
Yeah.
overindulging here?
I understand what you're saying. You're saying, Audrey, you've had a lot of therapy already. And so you're coming at this from a place of an awareness. But to me, it brings upon what you talked about earlier of like this sense of being victimized.
Right.
I was recently talking to a friend who is feeling very victimized by this profession. And I had to remind them that we can set boundaries.
Yeah.
But then if we don't hold to those boundaries, then that's our choice.
Right.
And if we don't hold to those boundaries and then our employer fires us, then those are consequences that we have to be willing to be ready for in setting those boundaries.
Right.
I think.
That's how boundaries work.
I think so.
You either keep them or they're meaningless. Not to scare anybody, but anytime you have a relationship with somebody where you allow your boundaries to be trampled over and over again, the message is these don't mean anything when I set them.
And conversely, when you have a relationship with somebody where you're going to change the agreement of the relationship by setting boundaries suddenly, many of those people can't come with you.
Nope, they shuffle themselves out of your deck for sure.
They shuffle themselves out of your deck is an outstanding graphic that we will surely put on social media because that is fantastic. Yeah, so I would love to know, when dealing with workaholism in an industry where there is mathematically a lot of scarcity, that's just the math on it, what are some flags that maybe an actor can look at to see if maybe workaholism is something that they themselves should be addressing?
One of them would be, how often am I breaking my word to myself? How often am I saying that I have a limit? How often am I saying that I'm going to do something or not doing something and then deciding to choose work instead? And there will be times where that's an okay choice. There will be times where you get that call and of course it's a big role and like it's a shot.
Yes.
And there will be other times where you're doing it because you just feel like you can't not do it. I think that's the powerlessness that this thing is talking about, right? And this is, I think, some of the hardest work that workaholics do is to ask yourself, do I really have a choice about this or not? And the truth is almost always, yes, I do.
Yes.
So are you breaking your word to yourself a lot? I think a big thing is, especially in the beginnings of addictions, is are people sending me overt or covert signals that this is a problem? Are people saying our relationship is suffering as a result of you doing this thing?
Let's talk about like real examples of that. So like if your spouse or if your family or somebody is telling you, giving you the feedback that the relationship is not being sustained because of your relationship with your work. So I have a great personal story about that.
Please.
That is a great example of that.
want it.
So when I was probably about 26, 27, my grandmother wanted the whole family to go on a Christmas cruise. And I was like, no, I have to work because in Los Angeles at the restaurants, you don't get to go home for Christmas. And I was relatively newer at this restaurant and my grandmother, bless her, I mean, my grandmother and I were thick as thieves and she's one of the best people in my life. And she was trying to say, while being also respectful, like, Audrey, I can help you if need be. This is a financial
money.
thing.
Yeah.
And I swear to you, I called and I left a voice message because they weren't home. I had been sold that this was the dutiful, correct response. Like I gave myself a real medal for this reaction and response I had. I called her and my grandfather and I said, hey, so I just wanted to let you know, I may not be able to go on any of this cruise because I have decided to be an actor. And when you decide to be an actor, there are things that you give up. And some of the things that you give up are time with vacations and things like that. But hopefully, like what you love about me is all of the things that make me me that are also part of what make me a great actor. And so I just want you to know, and I love you and I appreciate your support and all of those things. But I really wore it like, there, I handled my family.
Right.
I handled them.
Right.
And luckily, thank God, because of their honestly generous insistence, I wouldn't say it was a mean insistence, it was a kind insistence, and the collaboration of my coworkers to cover enough days of the shift, instead of going on a 10-day Christmas cruise that was going to be paid for by my grandmother, I left after 5 days out of an island and flew back to the restaurant on Christmas Day.
Shit.
Yes, and then continued to work the rest.
Wow.
And I really felt that that was a badge of honor.
Sure. Yeah.
I really felt like, yeah, you know what I do? Like, I'm here for that.
Well,
work.
and especially in a field, I mean, my heart goes out. That breaks my heart, that story, for you and your family.
Thank you, yeah.
In a field where there's so little validation, then what could we reach for other than maybe I don't have a role and I'm not famous, or maybe I don't own a house.
That's what it was.
But this is how I'm going to show you that I am dedicated to
Professional.
my craft and I'm professional.
In retrospect, I am certain that that's what it was. Yeah. I'm certain that what it was my embarrassment about what I had to, quote, show for it at this point, and just this feeling like I wasn't there yet.
Right.
And so I needed to keep working to be there because it's a whatever it takes industry, whatever it takes. And I don't have a lot of regrets. I don't. But the things that I feel like a little are those decisions where I decided to put work, and not even honestly like acting work, but like being at the restaurant in order to support myself, in order to pursue acting, over experiences with people who are no longer here.
Right. And I wish I could go back in time and meet that person and say, when will you know you get a vacation?
Right. I mean, that's one of the symptoms on here. That was like a symptom checker of like, are you a workaholic? They have stages of it. And one of the symptoms is, do you break promises to yourself family, or friends regarding work time, travel schedules, and other related employment activities? And or has your work patterns affected intimate friendships, important social activities you once enjoyed, such as vacations, fishing, sports, museums, or reading? And I was like, vacations?
Whatever do you mean?
What is that?
Like in the 80s?
Yeah, right. Like, I don't know who's doing this vacation
crazy.
thing, but you're bonkers if you think you can go on a vacation.
Right.
Hey, what if somebody calls and you have to be on set? What if you don't work for the year?
Right.
You always need to save that money because you don't know when the next money's coming in, right? And all of those things that lead to burnout, lead to resentment, lead to feeling victimized. And what I'm seeing happen in the industry is it feels like every part of the industry is turning to another part of the industry and being like, you victimized me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm resenting you. I'm burnt out. Why are you expecting? But it's like, it's a circle.
Well, that's how oppression works, right? Is you get oppressed people to oppress each other.
Oh my God, tell me more.
Well, it's a massive tool. And this is why unions are such a wonderful and important thing, is that a union is a group of oppressed people or potentially oppressed people getting together and saying, we are going to set limits, but we realize that we need all of our power together in order to overcome the difference in power between us and the power, right?
Imbalance.
And yet oppression, which, of course, we live in a world with tons and tons of it, works in part by getting people to say, it's not me who's the problem. It's them. That lighting guy.
Yes.
That lighting guy, we can't afford him, and that's why we're paying you so little. You know what I mean? And of course, there's even worse and graver forms of oppression all over the world. But like, as long as you're staring at the other guy and saying, what did he do to get his piece of this? Instead of saying,
like, hey, how come you guys are making $1 bajillion?
Exactly right.
And we're not all taking part in that profit sharing experience.
Right. Yeah. What is the system in place that allows you to keep your hands on hundreds of millions or billions of dollars? And I have to go into negotiations for my wages perpetually. Yeah.
Oh, God, what a satisfying conversation we're having. I don't know if you're watching Jon Stewart on The Daily Show right now, but on Monday he had a conversation with a reverend who said that one of the marches of Martin Luther King and I think it was RFK's dual march was for increasing of the minimum wage to $2 an hour. And that was like 1964, 60-something. And that was seen as like to bring equality, right? And that if that was adjusted for inflation today, that would be $50 an hour.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Doesn't that hit?
Yeah. I don't even know what to say in response to that other than
sad.
Oh, it's
just really sad.
Yeah.
It's really, really sad. So back to being a workaholic, because that's to me so much of a part of it is it feels like the need to earn, the legitimate need to earn is already so pervasive that it feeds into the justification of workaholism because like, well, I got to earn because disasters are happening all around us, you know, like a pandemic can hit and then a strike can hit or, whatever, right? So what are some things now, if we're identifying some flags of things that happen that let you know that perhaps there's something awry here? Like you said, are you going against yourself? And also, are you getting feedback from people that you know and care about? Right? Then if a person wants to go about changing that, first, I always say on the podcast, go into therapy.
From your lips to God's ears.
I mean, for real, though, everybody. And they know. And I also tell them, because this is true, the amount of people who go into therapy and whose booking ratio starts igniting is very real.
Is that? I've never heard that.
Oh, it's real.
That's incredible.
I think it's because people start letting go of approval and start doing the work because the approval crushes the art and the freedom. And once you're sort of like, I do this because I want to, not for the approval process. Then you start allowing your personal artistic freedom come through, which
Yeah.
is engaging, which also brings ease and confidence, which makes people feel confident to hire you.
It happens in therapy too, believe it or not,
I'm
for
sure.
therapists, because when you just get started, nobody tells you to go into grad school. You're going to spend a few years and several $1,000s getting a degree, and then you're going to open a business.
Right.
And most of us have never done that and don't have any idea how to do it. So
Right.
new therapists are scared out of their minds. And so what happens is you're looking for your first couple of clients, and then it scares the shit out of you that you don't want to upset them, because if they do, they could leave you. And if you've been in the field for a long time
Yeah.
and you have done the work to make sure you're charging enough money,
Yes.
right, to where you're secure,
Yes.
then you can do really good, fearless work with people. And scared therapists do such bad work. But if you can go in and you can say, I think Audrey's going to hate this
Yes.
thing that I have to tell her, but I have to tell her because it's my job and it's responsible. And I know that at the end of this, she's either going to say, fuck you, and she's going to leave, or she's going to go, wow, that opened something up for me. And now I'm a newer, stronger, different person as a result of it. That's the work I want to be doing all the time.
it.
But unless you're financially secure
Right.
and you're not worried about alienating your customer base,
Right.
you can't do that kind of work.
Boy, I love it when we talk about other professions, because I think it helps always the actor watching to understand that it's not an isolated problem of just this profession, because we can get into the victimization of our choices.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, I chose being an actor, so this is what has happened upon
Right.
me. Whereas what I actually see is when people move from being an actor to any other job, the things that were an issue in acting are then the issue in the other job every time.
That seems reliable. Yeah.
Correct, right? Wonderful. So what are some things that somebody can do in addition to going to therapy to change or to be aware of or to manage, as we have discussed, because you probably have to work,
Right.
to manage your addiction to work,
Right.
and have it be a healthier relationship, you and your profession?
This is going to sound so simplistic,
Love it.
but it's so important, and I do it all the time with clients, is that people really need to stop and ask themselves how they feel. And that sounds like such a ridiculous cop-out from a therapist. But the truth is, all of us are having multiple feelings all of the time. And we ignore them. And we ignore them because we have busy lives and we got stuff going on. And if you're worried about making your deadlines or memorizing your lines or any of that stuff, it's not convenient to sit and go, am I feeling kind of sad right now? Am I feeling tired? Am I feeling upset? And so to do anything when you don't yet have that literacy is probably going to be way harder. My assumption is that probably makes actors better too, because probably knowing what's going on inside of you and what that feels like is probably helpful. So if that's incentive enough for anybody to try it, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
But check in with yourself. And you don't have to change anything. You don't have to do anything. I just want you to know how you feel, whether you like what you're doing, whether you feel comfortable, rested, fulfilled, connected. And if you don't, then why? And what's missing for you? And again, you don't have to change anything. I just want you to know. And people are all the time moving so fast and taking so many of these decisions for granted. Like, of course I have to do this audition. Well, what happens if you don't? And maybe the answer is, maybe I really will blow it. Maybe I am in a hostage situation and I have to do this audition, and that's okay. But I would really want people to know the real stakes that they're playing at and what's really going on inside them.
Yes.
And I think it was, you were telling me earlier about
Yeah.
somebody pulling up at an audition and going, I don't want to do this.
Yes, right.
That's powerful. That's so important. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? And think about if you ignored that, if you went, fuck it, I got to go to an audition. You could go for years longer. You could miss that realization.
And many do.
And many, many, many do. And then end up toiling for years in something that you don't love and maybe is not going to love you back. And even if it does love you back, I mean, the sad part is, how many of us have seen stories where somebody who's more successful than we could ever dream of being, somebody who owns multiple houses, has so much money, is getting a DUI or
JT,
right?
I'm looking at you, buddy.
Right.
Yeah.
Or abusing somebody or having some kind of meltdown.
Yep.
It doesn't make you happy. You are either going to be happy or you're not. And I think that self-care within the field is paramount to people really achieving whatever level of happiness they're going to get.
I'd also like to point out to people, because this might soothe everyone a little bit too, that I wouldn't have the expectation of it being a light switch. I talk all the time about light switch expectations because I think it's very appealing. And when you said, how do you feel, what I'm experiencing in the community at large, and I mean agents, casting directors, producers, directors, writers, actors, all of it is broken. Broke because of the years past where things have been what they've been, but broken because there was a hope that after the pandemic, things would go, after the strike.
Right.
And instead, what actually has happened mathematically is these companies are not in a position to compete with big tech in a way that now they are in sell mode and not in buy mode. And that's just like right now. I don't know where that's going. I don't know where that will be, but that's just like right now. And if that was a lot for anyone listening, don't worry. We'll do an episode on it. Don't worry about it. But that's part of why my theme for the season has been sustainable.
Yeah.
Is this sustainable?
Right.
And what you just said that I think was so beautiful is, how do you feel? And if there are parts of how you're experiencing this that are not sustainable, that you feel like if it's this,
Right.
then no. And do I need the booking of a job in order to change that? And can I count on that?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is no, then probably should set up some other alternatives
Right.
to soothe or solve that.
Yeah. And the world is a cool place and we live in a rich country. There's so much awesome stuff to do. It bums me out when I see people holding the job or whatever they see as the legacy higher than themselves. Because the truth is, each of us only gets one life. It's going to be over before you know it.
Yeah.
And is it worth it? And I mean, this is a question we all should be asking ourselves.
Yes.
When you see one of those stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and you think like, would I waste my life for this? And not to say that all those people have. Some of them are great and some are happy.
Right.
But like at the end of the day, if that's the thing you're working for, remember that like you're going to live for 40, 50 more years. Wouldn't you rather just enjoy it?
Yes. One of the things that I say to people is, if you got to touch that, but you were told you would touch that consistently and you would still be sick, does that change it? Does it matter?
Yeah.
And then that's why I'm like, okay, well, if this is it for you, if acting is it, then I just want to have a real conversation about what it actually is, so that we can support each other through unionization and communication and camaraderie, so that we can all be literally stronger together as an informed group and not a group that is fighting a race to the bottom of exploitation.
Yeah. And that's so hard because the other side of that slide is that there are a few people that are going to be wealthy and successful beyond anybody's dream. And I think that that is the thing that people keep their eyes on. I read an article written by a gambling addict years ago, and he said, the first time I went to whatever the casino was in Southern California, I sat down and I won $5,000, which is just a ton of money, right? Won $5,000 at the poker table. And I thought about that night every day for the last 5 years. I thought about it when I gambled away my car. I thought about it when I gambled away my house. And I thought about it when I gambled away my kids' college funds. Towards the end of the article, he's deep in his addiction and he's describing sleeping in his car at the casino. But it was like he had this moment that imprinted on him of that one night he was so successful. That one night he was rewarded beyond his wildest dreams. And it wasn't enough. And it wasn't enough for him to recognize the damage he was doing to himself.
That analogy is so powerful because I talk about gambling all the time, but I mostly talk about it in terms of gambler's loss fallacy. That you just keep going in and in and in, and it prevents you from making the perhaps healthier decision to move along. Right. But what I love about what you just said is two things. It reminds me of the amount of actors who get into this because of the rush and love and feeling that they have as theater kids in high school.
Yeah.
Right? The validating, fun, belonging, and just like you would finish a play and the curtain would go down after your 3-day run and they'd be like, yeah. We conquer the world, right? And this chasing of that feeling. And then also it makes me think about this discussion on ego that I really like, which is ego is looking at an experience that happened at the past and placing it in the present moment where it does not belong.
Oh, wow.
So it's like for an actor, well, I got told in acting class that day how incredible I am and how fantastic of an actor and what incredible asset I am.
Right.
And because of that moment, I cannot receive the earned critique from perhaps this casting professional or this director about my performance.
Because it's existentially threatening.
Yes, because I have this validation that I've now brought on my identity.
Built myself around.
Of like, I am this good. And you are telling me something different.
Right.
And that is why often artistic growth is very painful.
Yeah.
Is because in my experience, it's just a lot of shedding, a lot of humility and shedding and shedding and shedding and shedding.
Yes.
And that's also what's incredibly beautiful about it. But you're constantly releasing the ego because so much of it is driven by ego in the beginning. So you're constantly like, that whole thing, shake it off.
And also, I mean, what a mind fuck, because I'm sure sometimes people get feedback that is incredibly valuable and important and incisive. And I'm sure people get feedback that is meaningless and stupid. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure people go in for great auditions all the time, and then some dummy who's having a bad day says
something stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even more sinister, which happens all the time here, is you get love bombed because people want to engulf you in their cult of whatever their class or their system or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. I've been talking on the podcast about how the Oscars was created as a union busting tactic. Did you know that?
No.
Okay. So
tell me the story.
LB Mayer was like, I want a pool in my house in Connecticut. And there was some labor strife happening. And so he was like, God, how am I going to deal with this labor problem? And so he created the Oscars so that they could differentiate between the artists and the labor class. And so it was like, yeah, but you're the artists. You're special. We're going to give you gold.
Wow.
And then these are the laborers. We're not going to give them the royal treatment.
So this is how oppression works.
Yes. And by God, if that wasn't incredibly successful, I don't know what success is. I mean, just the comprehensive understanding of instead of paying you, I'm going to give you a gold statue. And then, yes, the hierarchy begins.
Yes.
As opposed to it takes all of us to make this happen.
Right.
And all of our art forms are valuable.
Yes.
And let's all get paid.
That's the other thing is that like this notion of, there's only one important part of this thing. There's only one person that we're going to glorify or hold up on a pedestal.
Totally.
And we're going to make sure that everybody else knows that they should always be scrambling for the statue. Because when you have the statue, that's when you know.
You're it. You're legit.
Wow.
When you say it, I have like a visceral heart reaction.
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, it's just really sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad because I've watched so many beautiful, bright spirits enter. And if they're lucky, for many of them, they leave and then they recover, honestly.
Yeah.
But I have watched so many beautiful and bright spirits, instead of becoming stars, become black holes.
Right.
Because the resentment and trying to get a hold of that statue is so wrapped up in their identity and purpose. And it's just sad because it's manipulative at the end of the day. It was literally a manipulative tactic to differentiate us from each other as opposed to an artistic whole.
Yes. And one of the things I tell people all the time, because, I'm from the South, and so people always have a lot of opinions about Los Angeles. But like one of the things I tell people is that people in Los Angeles are so nice. Yeah. Like Angelinos are nice people. They're good people. They're reserved. And the reason is that they, tell me if you agree with this or not, but like, everybody's had that experience of, having somebody walk up to them who needs something from them.
Yes.
Who, like, wants to take something from you.
Yes.
And I think we get very guarded because we're worried about being taken advantage of. And then you add to it, the tremendous, sad, unhoused epidemic here where, a lot of people are really mentally ill. And so being approached on the street by strangers is suspect to Angelinos. And so I think that creates this myth that people are shitty.
Yeah,
but
right.
all I will say is that for my years of abandoning acting this week in Los Angeles and my years of being a fully unsuccessful musician was that, as hokey as it sounds, at the end of it, the best part of it was all the people I met. The best part of it was the kind people, the largely unfamous people that have made my life worth it. And that's the part about being a therapist that's so rewarding to me is that I get to sit every day and have real conversations, not silly bullshit conversations for the most part, not passing the time conversations, but conversations where I get to go, hey, what really matters to you today? How are you actually feeling today? That to me, that's living.
Oh, yes. That's being present.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's the juice.
Yeah.
I'm so with you. And also, that's what I think actors love about acting.
Yes. I think
the like being present and like, let's click, let's be here with each other. Let's express honestly.
Yeah.
And yes, also as someone else, but through you. And that's what's really, I think, for actors, so satisfying.
Totally.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to ask you some wrap-up questions.
Okay.
Do you have any social media or anything where people can contact you?
Yes, I do. So I have an Instagram at Nick Bognar MFT. And I pronounce the A because it's an easy name to misspell.
Oh, great.
Although there's another Nick Bognar spelled the same way who won a James Beard Award, which is like the Oscars of
Amazing.
cooking. So even with my unusual name, I don't get to be the famous one. So at Nick Bognar MFT
Great.
is my Instagram and then on my website, nickbognartherapy.com.
Wonderful. And you have podcast links and all of that?
Yes.
To all of that?
All of them.
I just want everyone to know I really enjoyed listening to so many of your episodes because it gets into the inner workings of the world of therapy and all the things we're talking about now with acting, you talk about with therapy. So if anyone is interested or knows anyone making that transition into becoming a licensed therapist, I highly recommend it. And if you are a licensed therapist and an actor, which there are many, then I also highly recommend it. So you have both an Audrey Helps Actors community, and then you've got your community helping people to understand and have community and transparency and communication about that profession as well.
Thank you so much for that. I really, coming from you, that's high praise.
Oh, great. I love it. Cheers to high praise. Okay, great. This is a question I usually ask in every episode. What does success look like to you now, sitting where you're sitting in this time in your life?
My personal success?
Yes.
I tell you, I would have never guessed ever until I got married and then went through couples counseling, the impact that having a wonderful marriage and a loving partner would have on me. And I know you know what I'm talking about. I couldn't have predicted it. Even when I got married, I couldn't have predicted it. I don't know that I would pass the level of being a workaholic, but I was all work all the time. I really didn't have much of an inner life for the most part. And so, marrying a partner was a big deal for me. And then doing the work to prioritize that relationship and make it number one in my life. And now I can say candidly and earnestly that you could take away anything else from me and I would give it to you in order to keep my marriage. And gratefully I don't have to, but
yes.
I have a therapy license, which is phenomenal. My career is a delight. I really enjoy my work and the people that I work with, and I would trade it to stay with her. So fortunately, I get to have this wonderful marriage with a wonderful partner. I have this fantastic career where I really enjoy what I do every day. And I get to both enrich myself, which is real, and I get to help other people. And I'm really not talking about clients here. I do help clients.
Yes.
But that's commerce, right?
Yes, right.
But I also get to help lift up other therapists who are coming up.
Yes.
And hopefully do some good on the pro bono side of my business to help other people in the area.
Yes.
That to me is the whole picture. I would say to anybody else, forgive me, you didn't ask me this.
No, it's great.
I think that whatever it is, we all should know. And I don't know that I knew. I think I had a really amorphous Oscar statue style sort of
idea of success,
but I never really looked inward to see how do you actually want to be living your life? So I'm glad that you asked people that question. And I hope that everyone gets to experience it.
Yes.
At this level.
Yes. Yes. I always tell my husband that he's my greatest accomplishment.
That's a good sign.
It is a good sign. He's always like, am I your accomplishment? And I'm like, no, the fact that I found you, that we get to be married, that, we have the whole experience. I'm so with you. It is so surprisingly fulfilling in a way that I had no expectations of.
And it doesn't just happen, right?
No.
You have to build it, care for it, nurture it like anything else. And nobody really told me that.
Last two things. One is, do you have any questions for me? And you don't have to.
So I'll tell you, I listened to a handful of episodes of your podcast in preparation for this. And this is going to sound like I'm kissing Audrey's ass, but the truth is I've already been on Audrey's podcast now, and I have nothing to gain from effusive praise in genuine right now.
All right.
But one of the reasons my own podcasts are not updated is because I find them cumbersome and frustrating. And it was yet another thing that I didn't want to do badly enough to go through all the work of it. And yet here I am in this very professional environment. Folks, if you ever get a chance, this is a lovely professional studio, and watched you and Jesse set up the room. Do you get tired of that? Or do you love it? How do you keep making, what was it, 150, 120 episodes now? How do you keep the zest for that?
Great question. Well, first of all, I keep the zest because I love having conversations like these. I've become aware that I have a talent for having conversation in a way that is digestible. And that is unique. And I didn't realize that was unique.
Oh, yeah.
So I do feel that if we're talking also about calling and putting your talents to good use, that feels very satisfying to me. And for my husband as well, I would say he's very passionate about truth. And I also am passionate about, like I said, I'm so passionate about the thing that I say to people that is like, they call it a career concept. So like, what's the thing that motivates you, right? And so my career concept is to provide relief, because I feel strongly that so much of life is inherent in suffering and fatigue, and everyone's parents have diabetes or so, it's like, there's just like so much that can make things heavy.
Right.
And so anything that can provide relief, whether it's through levity or through understanding or through pressure valve release, whatever that is, I'm very passionate about that. It's been very empowering to get better at it as well. And that's also been really rewarding, because I've built something and now I feel like, oh, building something. Oh, I understand what this is. Building something. And now I also feel like my empathy and comprehension of anyone who's built anything is also so much stronger.
Must be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, I would say if I had known how much work it was going to be, I likely wouldn't have done it.
Sure.
If I had known the direction it was going to pull me in also, I also probably wouldn't have done it. But I do feel very honored to be the person that has the right blend of qualifications.
Yeah.
And to have a husband/producer partner who has their own right amount of qualifications to continue to be what I hope is a source of light with truth.
Right.
As opposed to light with bullshit or truth with darkness.
Sad rain clouds all the time. Yeah. And doom, right?
Right.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I want to say I appreciate that. I think you're breaking a taboo here, which is that I think that we shame people and we tell them, don't tell stories about how hard this is unless you're past it. Like if you succeeded, then you can talk about how hard it was, how hard you worked, how many auditions you went to and failed. But until you're at that point, be ashamed of anything you have that doesn't work out and how unsuccessful you are.
Yes.
And the truth is, everybody here is doing some version of the same thing. We should be loving ourselves and loving each other. So I appreciate you being a message in the opposite direction.
Thank you. Yeah. I hate shame. We could do a whole nother episode about shame.
Yeah.
And how I think shame is, and I've learned through all the years of being in therapy, shame is just as toxic as it gets.
Yep.
And anything I can do to opposite shame in the course of the world, I'm here for.
I love that.
That's opposite shame. Whatever the opposite of that is, that's what I want to do. Wonderful. And lastly, you get to pick and take home a plushie.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm 1000% certain. Now wait, I want you to take a look.
Okay.
And then you get 20 seconds. And then when you're done, you have to sit down and then introduce us to your choice.
Oh my God.
Okay.
When does the timer start? Okay.
2, 3, 4,
Oh my God.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, anyone you want, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Plushie cat! Yay! All right, let's talk about Plushie cat. Why?
I'm emotional. I'm delighted by this. I didn't know this was a part of it.
Tell me about why Plushie cat really spoke to you.
So I love cats.
Yes,
I have.
too.
I've had several. I have one right now. He doesn't work to earn my love, but I love him. And this one, I like how happy it is and how it's living its best life. I feel like when I was a kid, I mean, now I'm going to go deeper than I intended to go. But,
Yeah, that's great.
When I was a kid, this would have been the one that I would have loved. And growing up in the South like I would have been called a lot of slurs over it. And so I learned very early on not to select things like this. Do you know what I mean? And so it's interesting that you put me under pressure for 20 seconds and then I just decided to go for it.
Yes!
So anyway, so I love this. This is dear to me. Thank you.
Okay, now, do you think perhaps you have a name for this plushie and you don't have to yet?
I want to impress you by having one, but I think like
No,
all
I would
cats,
like
you
for
have
you
to
to
get
take
to
your
know
time.
it, and
Great.
then it tells you its name.
That's
That's
so
my experience
true.
with cats. So
That is so true. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming. This
pleasure.
has been so rewarding. I hope that maybe we can all get together with Sean and Morgan and
love it.
have a great dandy old time. And we can all be theatrical and nerdy about therapy together.
I would love that. You
Sounds
let me
like a
know.
dream. I
Yeah.
would love to. So thank you so much for giving me your time. I know that it's valuable. And I think this episode is going to reach so many people. And I especially loved in one of the interviews that you talked about how you earn appropriately so that in earning, you can then take the time to be generous when you can and
you did
give
listen.
generously. Oh, yes. And I thought that was so beautiful. I'm so glad that because of that choice, you can be here and give this generous sharing to a community that really wants it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That makes me feel so good.
Yeah, good.
Next week on Audrey Helps Actors, we've got Robin Keller. Robin Keller. Thanks so much to Nick. This was an incredible episode. I have already, it's not out yet, but I've sent it to several people already because I'm just so excited about it. This episode was mixed and mastered by Thomas Snodgrass. Produced by Jesse Lumen, my husband, still so handsome. He gets older and gets better looking. Fuck that guy. Show music by Ari De Niro, theme song by Aalok Mehta and 108 Hill. And this episode was edited by Matthew Patrick Davis. And for our listener, don't forget your towel when you go to the gym. Thanks to Casting Networks for sponsoring this episode. A new feature they're offering is called Thrive. Thrive Health Benefits. Thrive. It just comes with it. Enjoy access to telemedicine and behavioral health services, saving an average of $564 from medical and mental health care per year. Don't worry, guys. I'm going to do an interview with them. I'll post it. If it were me, I'd be like, what? And so you're all like listening like, what? We're just going to tell you a little bit more. It's going to be a different thing. But it's there, and that's nice. The best part, it's free for premium members who are based in the US and over 18. Go to castingnetworks.com/Audrey and use promo code AudreyCN. That's AudreyCN for Casting Networks, not AudreyCN for cow noises. Nobody needs those. Moo. For $65 off a premium annual membership. Cow noises. Moo. 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 I haven't spent enough time around cows.